Hello, everyone. Great to join you, and thanks for taking time to join us. As you hopefully know, and hopefully what you've signed up for in the next hour and a half or so, is to really explore what's emerging in terms of both the website and the dashboard. And lucky to be joined by my colleague, Stacey Wegley. We're both with Community Initiatives and part of the professional development team. And you're going to hear from Jamie Kleinsorge, who is part of a network of family and friends. She works at CARES at the University of Missouri and has been doing a lot of great work, as you'll see, with her team on the website. And so you'll hear from her. And I think really the purpose, again, of this is to share what's emerging in terms of the Well-Connected Community website and, some of the features and capabilities. What I suspect and hope you'll see is that there's been a lot of really great thought put into this. A number of you on the phone have given feedback, and we've gleaned insight from you. Beth has played a pretty major leadership role in helping to make sure that what is built out is practical. So you'll hear both from Jamie where we're at and kind of the trajectory moving forward for that. And it's an opportunity to really get some feedback from you all in insights as, this isn't the beginning of the journey, but in some ways, before we kind of go public in January, we thought we'd give this group, given your leadership and your kind of on the ground perspective, kind of a early peek at that. And then after we have a chance with Jamie to do that and to we'll kind of pivot, and Stacey is going to share a little bit more about the metrics, kind of a little bit of background behind the metrics and what's being used and why. And again, as you'll hear, there's an evolutionary process on that side as well. And specifically moving maybe a little bit into a how-to, what it will look like from your perspective to kind of use this dashboard and input metrics. And so this won't be the only time. Not only is this being recorded, but there'll be other opportunities. So I think our real goal is to give you a high-level view of the landscape, get your feedback, start to get you familiar with some of the concepts and some how-tos. Again, the last thing that I would just say is hopefully what you'll see, and I want you to be listening for and looking for to see if we got it right, is we wanted to make sure these sites were useful to you, that they were really additive to your work, not an extra hoop to jump through. And having participated in the harvest sessions, and I know a number of you actually participated in the harvest sessions, some of this website is really hopefully going to be supportive to what is emerging as a more intentional learning community across a number of sites. We know that it's not going to be the only source of the learning community, but it might serve as a little bit of some of the backbone for some deeper learning, which I know from the harvest sessions there's a really strong desire for. So that's one of the spirits in which this has been designed. I think I'm going to just pass this over to Jamie.
Yep, thank you, Monty. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys here. So 1 second. Let's see. All right. Let me see if I can get rid of all those videos. All right. So what I'm going to do here for the next 15 minutes or so is just give you a quick tour around the Well-Connected Communities. This is our development site. And so part of what we want to show you today, or what we're really going to be focusing on today, is the metrics portion of it. But just wanted to give you an overall view of what we are working on and working towards. So we do have a live site that is available at wellconnectedcommunities.extension.org. We will be transitioning this development site to that URL. The scheduled launch date for this new site is January 7th, so you will be able to access it around that time. So can everyone see my screen and hear me okay? Yes? Okay, great. I think I have some options turned on here. Let me close this out. There we go. Okay, great. So this is the home page. So you'll see here that we just have a few standard images that kind of scroll, that talk a little bit about or represent the Well-Connected Communities Initiative. As you scroll down, we do have three major portions of the site that we want to direct you to very easily. So we have this Take Action button, which gets you to the journey itself. So it brings together all of the resources that the professional development team has been working on into sort of a community journey through the Well-Connected Communities Initiative, and I'll show you a little bit of what that looks like. We also have the community dashboard, which I think all of you guys will be excited to see, and that's where you're also going to be inputting your metrics. And then we have a news and events section as well. So here we imagine that you'll find stories about what other communities are doing. You'll also find other types of events and news pieces like what Shay puts out on a regular basis as well. As we scroll down here, we have a nice map of all of the different communities that we are working with or that are part of the initiative currently. Hopefully you see your state represented here and then how many communities are participating in each state. As we continue down the page, this is some exciting recent data that we received based on the input that you all gave to the Qualtrics survey. So you were asked several questions, and those are some of the same metrics that we're going to be collecting through this dashboard, but we were able to aggregate those and create this nice homepage graphic to really show the impact that the Well-Connected Communities Initiative is making all across the United States. So what you can see here, we have about 389 participating youth volunteers, a little over 1,300 adult volunteers, and then we have lots of organizations partnering with us as well across the nation. We have the different types of partners here, so things like healthcare providers, nonprofits, K through 12 education, so school systems, university, philanthropic organizations, and you can see a nice representation of sort of where those partners, where they're getting involved across the nation. And then we also have our coalition status here. So where are you at in building your coalition? Do you have a new coalition? Are you joining an existing coalition? Are you starting a new one? So you can see that development here, and we have a couple of other metrics that we'll be adding to this homepage dashboard as we receive that information. So just want to give you kind of a brief overview there. We imagine that those numbers are going to be updated quarterly because as you guys are submitting your quarterly metrics, we'll be able to aggregate those and put them on the homepage on a quarterly basis. You'll be able to see the progress that's being made across the initiative there. We do have some information under the About section, so I'm just going to take you briefly through the navigation here. We have a little bit about the initiative, and then we're going to have some application materials. So if there are other folks that that are interested in joining the Well-Connected Community Initiative, then you can direct them here. They can get all of the information that they need, but we do have links also to all of the different land-grant universities that are participating in the initiative as well as information about the communities. So this is the Take Action section that I had pointed out on the homepage. One thing that we just wanted to show you here today, this graphic's going to be changing. We've got some updated graphics, but basically it's a journey to get you started. We understand though that you're probably halfway through this journey, maybe you're 2 steps in, maybe you're towards the end. Really, you can start anywhere, and hopefully these different resources that we've put together for each of these steps will help you get through each of the steps and then move on, progress forward. So you can see here, this is an example, work together. So we have a little bit about why work together. That's really the first step in the journey. What are the work together core competencies? So we'll have a lot more information on these competencies as we roll out the website. We have an example, just one for now, but we're planning to have many more of how communities are working together and how they tell that story of how they're working together. And then we have some resources that say, help me work together, help me do this better. And so you can see there's a couple of resources here. These are from the county health rankings, but we'll have more that will grow over time. Over here, you can see you can kind of travel through the journey with these nice buttons. So here, this next step is around assessing your community. So why assess your community? What are those core competencies? Again, what is an example of somebody doing that well? And then what are some resources that can help me or help you all assess your community better? So that's really under that Take Action section there. Then we get to the community portal. And so here you'll see that we have a group or a community profile for each of the 39 participating communities. The one that we're going to demo today is going to be Thurston County, Nebraska. This has been really our test bed for developing the metrics and for developing the dashboards. But you can see here we have a nice image of where Thurston County is in Nebraska. We have a little bit of just background information about the area, and then we get into the dashboard itself. And Stacy's really going to take a much deeper dive into the metrics, so I'm just going to kind of give you some highlights here. But we have major sections that you'll be able to modify and update on a quarterly basis. So the first one is about our coalition. So you can see the coalition status here. Where are you at again in building that coalition? Who are your partners? Just like we had there on the homepage, you'll be able to see, are you partnering with healthcare? Are you partnering with universities? Are you partnering with nonprofit organizations or businesses? And kind of see that distribution, maybe identify some gaps of new partners that you should be engaging. We also have a map, which is exciting, so you'll be able to kind of see the geographic distribution of those partners as well. So not only the sectors, but then the geography. Getting into assessing your community, kind of where are you at in that journey of assessment? Have you started? Are you in progress? Are you complete for the year? And then also we have some additional metrics for you just to view. So you can see here we have some county health rankings, health outcomes, health behaviors, and health factors, and then some leading health indicators for the area. So graduation rate, unemployment, recreation, and fitness. The next section is really around priority setting and strategy development. So where are you at in setting your priorities? We recognize that some communities aren't quite there yet, which is totally fine, but over time you'll be able to kind of move that bar more towards in progress and complete. What are your priorities if you have set some, and what are those strategies that you've identified? And then we do have a section here at the bottom for some stories we have stories from the field here. I think it's just going to be called stories moving forward. So this is really going to give you an opportunity and others an opportunity to see sort of what's going on. It's a snapshot for every quarter of the progress that you've made, what you're working towards, and how you plan to get there. So this community dashboard page will be viewable to the public. Everybody that joins the site can see this community dashboard page. So it's going to be important for you all to pay attention to what Stacy's about to say, to learn how to actually update the information on this page so it always stays fresh and relevant. And the actual metric portion, which is under this quarterly report section, will be private, as well as this update community and the documents library. So that's really where you all come in. We will have administrators for each of these communities. So 1 to 3 people in Thurston County, Nebraska will have an administrator status, and they'll be able to access, again, this community dashboard page, make those updates, submit their quarterly metrics, and do any other changes, add new members, those types of things to this community profile. So that'll be important for us to make sure that the right people have that administrator status, the right people are pushing the right buttons on the metrics, and we'll obviously be here to help you, support you in doing that, especially for that first month. We also have then a resources section. You'll see here that there are some probably familiar resources like the communications toolkit, the master volunteer curriculum. We also have a community assessment tool and a map room where you can access data. There's a learning calendar, just like the one that's on the current site, and then a resource archive. So things that you'll find in the archive are like these types of webinars that we're doing today, other webinars that have been held over the past year. As mentioned, we also have this news and updates section. So we see here that we've got a couple of stories that we've staged, but we're hoping to gather stories from you all and from just across the initiative and add them here. So there's always kind of a constant update to news and things that are going on. We also have a submit a story form. So this will hopefully make it very easy for you to submit your story if you're interested in sharing you know, something that you've done or a success that you've had implementing some of the strategies in your community. And then finally, we have a contact section. So again, you can reach out to us. If you have technical questions, you can reach out to the professional development team. If you have questions about sort of progress and where you are. And then we're also going to have a frequently asked questions section. So hopefully if you do have a problem and it's 8 o'clock on a Friday and we're not available, hopefully some of those resources can point you in the right direction. So just as a reminder then, basically everything that you see here, most of the information available on the site is going to be public. So, you know, any general person that visits the website is going to be able to access that. The only things that are going to be private are the community profiles, the being able to update those. The home pages, again, are going to be public. And then potentially some of the resources, so things like the communications toolkit and some other things that are proprietary sort of are going to be also behind a password. So you will need to log in order to access some of those things. So one thing that I ask of you all is just to be thinking about who may play that role as an administrator for your community, who's going to be in charge or responsible for updating your quarterly or submitting your quarterly reports, updating maybe who your partners are, sharing stories, those kinds of things. So again, we can have anywhere from 1 to 3 administrators for each of those community dashboards. So with that, I'm going to ask Stacy if I missed anything, and then I'm going to turn it over to her to talk a little bit more about the metrics.
Jamie, thank you. I know you're going to pass it to Stacy, and maybe this is a segue question to you, Stacy. One of the questions that's come our way is, and I think you addressed it a little bit, Jamie, how is the coalition status updated? Does the community enter that, or does it auto kind of populate based on other data that from another source?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Stacy's going to go through that right now. It's updated by the community. So it's what you guys report as your progress.
And a couple of different places for that. And again, we'll dive in here so you can see those details, but both for the community sectors, which will be a part of, you know, and sort of that makeup of your coalition will be a part of your report. And then for the community membership that's sort of showing up on the map, you'll actually get to build out, you know, sort of the location, name of the organization, et cetera, to be able to populate that map, which over time will give, you know, you the ability to reach out and sort of have a master list sort of baked in as well. That's one of the things that's been super important to us sort of in this collective build, and from lots of years of learning on community commons and with CARE supporting a host of other community hubs is, you know, we don't want, like in many cases with grants I've been in, a part of in the past, you know, data sort of goes into a black hole and you never get it out. Really one of the, you know, one of the assets that we really believe is here and look forward to, you know, continuing to activate and grow with you is that the data that you put in, you see back visually, you can extract your reports, you can save the visuals for community presentations or local reporting, you know, that's really a two-way. It's not just sort of a dump and go, that the use of the website really will be, you know, a two-way piece, helping to keep the pieces you need together and want to share and point people to as well. I'm going to move over and share my screen and step into the next piece. And while I'm doing that, just inviting folks again sort of into the chat room if their sort of thoughts or some of those initial reactions. Are you seeing some of the things that you had hoped for, and or what questions are arising for you? All right, wanting to make sure that you all are able to see my screen again, sort of with a head nod. Coming through okay? Terrific. So thanks, Monty and Jamie, for really sort of laying things out and getting us started. And really that sort of step into the metrics where the most of the rest of our time together will be really focused on sort of the data that will be collected, how you go about doing it, thinking together about, who you might invite to do that data entry. Many of you are here likely because you're going to be that point person in your community and or helping whomever that might be locally for you. But really wanted, again, to be able to show and share that the metrics are nested in sort of this broader space on, the internet, which we can, share and connect folks to sort of collectively who are asking about what is well-connected communities? What are you all doing? Who else is involved? And what are they doing? So I'm going to go ahead and hop into the community portal. As Jamie indicated, every community is represented, and so as we think also about sort of growing into wave 2, and you all perhaps are thinking about the second wave and the potential potential ability to add additional communities, this will continue to be enriched over time. A couple of quick just navigation pieces is you can sort. So, we've got 39 community groups now, community profile spaces, and over time this will get even more robust. So you'll have the ability to really sort of get at, who was sort of last active. That might tell you there's a new story or et cetera when you're wanting to see what other team members or communities are doing. You can do an alphabetical sort if you'd like to get there that way. And you can also sort of do a simple, all right, I want to be able to look at sort of all of the Nebraska and just get those up on the page because maybe you're, again, lead in Nebraska or want to be able to take a look across your particular community or point to just the Nebraska locations for a partner and invite them to take a closer look. So a quick and easy way to sort of do some of that sorting. One of the things that we're also looking forward to, again, what you're seeing is, an evolving piece. And over time, those community profile pages, we're hoping will have photographs, again, sort of increasing the, visual interest there, as well as, having something that's a bit representative of who you all are in your community or location. So on the community profile page, Jamie got us off to a great start there. And a couple of things I wanted to point out as a couple of assets on the public page is, again, the baked-in ability to get some of this information back out. So, for example, on your, your partner wheel for sort of who's involved, you can see we've got sort of built right in here that you can print the chart. You can download it in a couple of different visual options or as a PDF. Again, sort of what is here. We really want you all to be able to take with you to bake into your local reports, a slide deck for a community meeting, whatever that may be, as you all are talking about sort of who's at the table and maybe who's not at the table yet. So really wanting you to have access to what is here. Also note that there are a couple of places, and again, the sort of the specifics on the language will continue to, evolve and improve on over time. But in any case, we'll certainly have a host of links. So when we're talking about assessing the community, providing an opportunity really to hop right over to the community assessment, tool that's baked into the system. And so each of you who have a community are able to do an individualized report. We're not going to go through that today as we've done some of that in the past, but if you've not seen it or used that particular tool yet, I'll go sort of one step further. You can start to see that the CARES team and as well as some of the county health ranking data all baked in here so that you can actually generate a report. You can run the report on sort of all things or pull specifics out. But again, sort of those pieces are baked in, trying to create, we often say sort of a round-barn approach where we want to have multiple pathways and multiple to be able to get to the things that you're interested in are needing. This is, as you can imagine, the sort of the dummy data. That's sort of our starter for our visuals today, but these things will be active, as Jamie said, so with each quarter, or in the case of county health ranking, sort of annually when those reports come out, these things will be populating so that it will be, again, sort of live, not sort of one and done, stagnant. Once you've looked at it once, sort of no reason to come back. And the stories, of course. So let's get into sort of the back end. So Jamie had mentioned starting to think about really who will be doing your data entry, and really looking for that ability for you all to have sort of 1 to 3 folks who have sort of the administrative reins, if you will. Those folks who will have the ability to enter the data, modify data, approve members who will have availability to the space. And what some of that will mean or look like when we sort of speak about the members. The page that we've been looking at is public, and so when you're recruiting community partners, when you're publishing or making application to another grant, perhaps to supplement the work that you're doing here, you might point folks to some of this content. But this deeper sort of levels for your member page, your community documents, those areas are for your coalition. I know one of the things that we really found in the field over time is that, we're always sort of trolling through our emails, like, oh shoot, where was that last set of meeting minutes? Oh shoot, where, I want to share the action plan, with a new community partner. So those types of things, this space for your documents is baked in so that you have the ability to save those things that are already approved, that you're using. Maybe you've got talking points, maybe you've got a flyer you're using for an event. I know as you have these, multi-organization, multi-sector partners locally, folks have different, email requirements. Some folks can use Dropbox to share, and some folks, systems don't play well with Google, for example. And so this can become a space for you all to be able to host. Now, again, this space is for you and up to you. So you'll, figure out sort of what is the best fit over time. There will be a couple of items like the action plans and any materials, for example, from a needs assessment that will be useful, and that will also support, the national team, be it Beth or Michelle or Rebecca and others who may need to pull those or are, working on writing and updating a paper or doing, sort of preparing for a meeting. So those things will be sort of readily accessible for those team members as well. All right, hopping into our quarterly reports. You can see that there will be messaging. We'll be, again, sort of adapting this as we go, but this will be a space that the public does not have access to. So you will have to be an approved administrator to be able to log in and get to the, to the back end. So you don't have to worry about anyone being able to sort of make changes or edits to a report that you're working on, haven't submitted yet, or otherwise. So what we're starting to see here is the form, essentially, sort of the data entry form. Hopefully you'll note that many of the things we've been talking about through the harvest sessions, some of the Qualtrics data that you've already provided to Teresa, and the national team, you'll see some of the very similar types of questions, and trying to strike that balance between meaningful as well as, not collecting sort of all things we'd like to, all things perhaps we'd like to know. So really trying to focus on those things most valuable to helping us both tell our stories over time, as well as tracking progress as individual communities and as well as collectively for the initiative. So as a matter, just a little bit of a matter of process to think about sort of nesting this in, each quarter, at the end of the quarter, essentially Jamie and her crew or someone, some other individual with the magic button will essentially open the reporting dialogue or the reporting channel here, and you'll have 3 weeks with sort of the first time out in January, and sort of into the future you'll have kind of a 2-week window in which you'll be invited to update your quarterly report. And at the end of those 2 weeks, being certain that everyone sort of got their reports complete, then that data will be uploaded and become public on your profile page. Those things that feed to the homepage will be updated so that the overall initiative will be able to see that grow with volunteers and community partners, etc. as well as, again, this, not being a black box, you will also be able to extract or print out a report of what was submitted. So if at any point you need to go back to that, you'll have that. But as well as, Rebecca, Michelle, and others will be able to print those so that they can do the reporting that's necessary for them to be able to share the stories and the progress back up with Monica and others at the foundation. So you can see, I'm going to go through in some specificity some of the questions. Most of them are fairly straightforward. There are some nuances, and Jamie and I, with the Monty and Allie's eyes, etc., and other team members, will be building out a how-to, again, something super simple to kind of just support this in general, as well as an FAQ. So it's sort of like when you ask yourself, do I include this or don't I? Does this person count in this category? How do they show up perhaps twice? In the way that a partner is interacting with us. So some of those types of things, we'll build out some examples to help again clarify and really trying to set up those materials so that if you've got someone on leave, on vacation, or who transitions to another role, you'll have those supports for sustainability and for really being able to train up someone new who might be stepping in or taking over. So when you think about Section 1, this area is really focused on your health council or coalition. Everyone's still kind of using a preferred name, perfectly appropriate, and wanting to account for that here. So that first question is, how many youth are actively participating in your well-connected community efforts? And so this is going to be sort of youth sort of collectively. So whether they're helping with coalition development, whether they're participating in a program or an initiative, advocacy building, policy development, depending upon what you all are working on, what youth have been participating or contributing to those efforts in the last quarter. Question number 2 is more of an open-ended, and you can see, really we're asking just for a sentence or two, but really helping to add some context to the numbers, right? So the youth, this, in this quarter, in my community, the youth, held to sort of recruitment activities at the high school to, add to the coalition. They presented to City Council the findings from the community health assessment and, perhaps, again, sort of had a parent event. So whatever those pieces are, just, in a fairly simplified way, but being able to add some context to what types of activities. And it'll be, anyway, super excited to be able to see what's going on locally and again, be able to roll that up to really what's going on across the initiative. And as Monty said, then looking forward to how we, learn together and continue to connect and share what we're learning and folks who are doing similar things or folks who might be embarking on something similar to something a group has, sort of well advanced in their community. So question number 3, how many individuals are actively participating as coalition members? And so capturing both youth and adults. And again, we'll add some more sort of distinction to that because you may have youth who are sort of in both categories. And so we'll help explain a little bit sort of how to deal with what might be a double count. This piece feeling like though that it was important because there might be different ways that we're talking about the story or sort of who's really focusing, on the coalition work and didn't want to miss the youth who, may not be doing that sort of more formal role, but are actively engaged in other ways. Enter the number of coalition members then on number 4, representing each sector. So again, as we think about, the different organizations who may be partnering with you locally and contributing to this work, again, sort of working collectively, wanting to get those folks represented not only locally for you, but these, as you saw on the main page, the main homepage of the website, then your individual communities rolling up through the state or whatever to the national numbers as well. There is a place to put other. From CARE's previous work and our work with community initiatives, the sort of the list of organizations is fairly comprehensive, but each community is unique and or may have a particular way that folks want to identify. And so wanting to make sure that you all have the ability to specify any specifics that may not fit comfortably into one of the other sectors. When we head down to number 5, which phrase best describes your coalition? And again, really reiterating here, each community starts from a different place. We're all on our own journey. So there's no right or wrong for landing in any particular category. Really, it's just a reflection of the work and sort of the stage of the work that you're doing at this time. So, there may be some of you who still, don't have an active coalition, and really the focus of your work is still working on recruitment for coalition. Absolutely okay, but then wanting to capture sort of the variations of that. Got a new coalition sort of just getting started, perhaps a few meetings. Maybe there was already things going on, and what you're finding out now is that while you may have been trying to start a coalition, maybe you actually found that there was another coalition that it was better for you all to join. So really being able to hop in, and sort of shift your focus to joining another active coalition and bringing your unique views and perspective and assets to that. And then for those, communities who may have had, folks working together for a decade or more, being able to reflect that. Number 6 might appear to be one of the newer questions. I mean, many of the other pieces being asked here, we've been talking about in a whole host of ways through sort of kickoff to our working sessions together, in our time at Harvest or otherwise. One of the things we haven't spent as much time talking about is, does your coalition have written agreements that clarify the purpose of the coalition, the roles, and how you all will make decisions together? And that can come in a variety of forms, a bit of a mission statement. Do you work by consensus? What are the different roles? Are there committees? Is there, an executive leadership? And this is really more just, saying, have, we taken that step to start to make those decisions? Are they in writing? Have we gained agreement on them? That starts to speak a little bit to perhaps the maturity of your coalition. And so sort of a yes, no, or in progress there.
Should be ending in 15 minutes.
Section 2, really focusing on the community health needs assessment. Number 7 being, have you completed a community health needs assessment? Maybe you've not yet started, you're in progress or complete. Again, fairly straightforward. Number 8, then what methodology? So not only sort of where are you, but what are the types of ways that you've gathered information and are, sort of helping to review what interests are, what priorities are in a community, what data that your team or coalition might have been looking at to help start to think about what some of your priority issues might be that you're looking to address. So did you do stakeholder meetings? Did you do surveys? Did you leverage existing community health needs assessments from hospitals or public health, et cetera? Kind of pull those off the shelf and look back at them. Did you run that perhaps on your Well-Connected Community site?
Hey, Stacy.
Yep.
Could you make your screen just a little bit bigger? The words it feels like they're getting smaller and smaller as you're going.
Interesting. All right. Yeah. Did that help some?
Yeah. Maybe one more.
All right. Let me do another stretch.
Yeah. Maybe just the zoom in. Can you zoom in once or twice to make the text bigger?
Let's do it.
One more time. There, that's perfect. Thank you. Sorry. Excellent. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one having trouble, but it just seems so small.
I appreciate that. Yes. Terrific. So I think sort of really the community health needs assessment, we can see that was fairly straightforward. Action plan and priority issue. Again, you can see a pattern here. So I'm going to spend sort of less time in the details, I think, sort of at each question, because you'll have some supporting documents for, again, nuancing. But you can see in this section, we've got a handful more open-ended questions. So, each of you have completed an action plan earlier this year, so you'll be updating that. And now we really have sort of the opportunity to talk a little bit more about where's the initiative gaining traction? And in this case, we are asking for sort of a paragraph or two rather than just a sentence or two. But again, not needing to write a 1-2-page report by any stretch, just what are some of the highlights? What are some of the things that have been going well, where you feel like you're making some progress? Maybe you overcame a hurdle from the previous quarter. You have a new partner you've been, pursuing who's finally agreed to join. So how's that going? And where are you getting stuck? Again, this is, Jamie pointed out, this really is work, as you all know all too well, where sometimes we take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. We've got a key person who's left maybe, we've got another big initiative that has come into the community, and we need to figure out, how we want to work together in new ways. So, just reflecting really some of the narrative, some of the context for what's going on in community. And then also asking sort of the question about what priority issue will you be focusing on. Now, again, this is an area where not everyone will answer this question, and that's okay. You might simply write, not there yet, or NA. Again, we'll provide some more detailed guidance from that perspective, based on sort of how this populates then visually, but not an issue. Some of you are still developing, and really building that strong foundation for coalition. So there may not be answers for some of those questions. And then section 4 being for the Master Volunteer Program, recognizing that that's also actively getting launched and webinars have been starting to occur, et cetera. And so it's likely in these, next, anyway, the short, near term, that not all communities will have done this, and not all communities, depending upon sort of where you began, will even be responsible in this pilot year for having done a master volunteer training. But some of you may choose, even if you weren't required to do it. So again, not all of you may have answers to this particular question, or it might not be, it might be more of a non-applicable. That's completely okay. And then as we sort of finish up here real quick, there'll be an ability to save as you go, because maybe you get, sort of part of your narrative done, or maybe you've got your numbers together but want to come back, or maybe you tag team this in some way. Somebody's got the numbers and somebody does more of the narrative writing for you. You can save as you go, and then you'll have the ability to check the box when it's complete. However, you all decide sort of locally to say, okay, we're good to go, and national will know that that piece is fully submitted. All right, I am going to scroll back up and spend just the next couple of quick minutes on updating your community. That was part of the question that came in from Monty with that earlier piece. And you can see here, we've got links, and this piece may not be, we may choose not to make it active sort of out of the gate, but are baking it into the background so that, for example, we know that even though we've got, a national central website for well-connected communities, some of you very well may have built out blurbs or other pages or spaces on existing, websites locally. And so we want you in time to be able to actually point back to your local organization, perhaps maybe the page that is built into your website. Also, maybe there are key resources that you want to share. For example, I know Utah is doing some online version of the volunteer training that there, will be available to others. And so being able to provide a link off of their community profile page. So those things then will populate, and some of where that will land on the homepage is still some of the sausage that's still being made. Your community contacts, this is another area where you will be able to fill in sort of who you want perhaps to be the point person on your public facing page. You all will be able to kind of decide again by community if folks are interested, and you won't have to populate sort of all areas. Maybe you're putting, a name, Belinda, maybe it's, your name and an email address because you're not really up for, phone calls, but maybe you prefer somebody, leave you a voicemail or reach out by voice. And so those will be some of the areas that you guys will again get to customize for who will be kind of your point person to receive questions that will show up on a public profile. Your community partners. Again, this is completely adaptable over time. So you'll be able to add organizational names, sort of the location, that'll get them to the map. And then you can see we're starting to bake in some other assets or attributes for those partners. So maybe the partner website, and if their interest over time, so that when you pull up that partner on the map, again, folks can get connected to or see a little bit more about who that partner is. These things, again, nothing is permanent, right? So if partners, move on or, sunset for any reason, you're able to continue to adapt that over time through additions or being able to, again, sunset someone. And then the story page that Jamie mentioned, again, this is an area where you can see, again, there's a bit of just the generic story on the Thurston homepage as the sample. If you all don't have a story out of the gate, that's going to be completely fine. That section or sort of that box on your community profile page simply won't populate. So, this is set up again to really be reflective of what's there and what makes sense, and to not leave sort of blanks and holes in ways that, might try to compare communities sort of inappropriately, because sort of, again, customizable. You're each unique on a unique journey. And trying to build a system that's super responsive to that. All right, we are at 10 till the hour. Those are the specifics. We're not intending to really go deeper today, sort of in the documents in the upload section. That's going to operate very similarly to, any other word processing system that you've used, Google Docs, Dropbox, or otherwise, but we'll come back to later tutorials and sort of more on those pieces. So Monty, I'm going to pause. It did look like I'm not able to see the questions coming in, but it did look like there were some things populating, and so let's
take a couple of those. I think folks may or may not be tracking with some of the chat. There's been a good question around how to access a new login, and I think Jamie, as some of you can see, it suggested that that will be assigned to the administrator or administrators, and the other community members can actually, once the site is launched, log in as members and have access to all the pieces that are publicly available.
Yeah, and just to build off that too, you all as administrators, again, will have access to add new members or, again, delete members if you've had some turnover or any sort of changes in your coalition. And so you guys will have access to all of those things. As we talked through what we consider user roles, we realized that the folks here, we don't know your communities. We don't know who is best, who are members and who's best to serve as administrators. So we really wanted to give you guys the power to do that yourselves.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. Any tips from you, Jamie or Stacy, on who makes for a good administrator? Or, as they're thinking about 1, 2, or 3 people to play that role?
Yeah, I think mostly, the folks that are going to be responsible for submitting the quarterly metrics, that have a good understanding of who all the partners, the coalition partners are, so they can update their map and that sector graph. And then, if you do have somebody who's working through media or storytelling or doing communications for your coalition, that might be a good third person to really, again, round out that story section. Or provide narrative in your metrics, your quarterly metrics reporting.
Okay. We have a question about the story section under the update community. Is it different from the story from what Jamie showed us earlier? Maybe one is more internal team questions or on the last. Can you help distinguish that?
Yeah, the story form that we're looking at now within the community reporting, this piece in particular will populate to the community profile homepage that is publicly available. And so that is a piece that we're imagining that, again, folks will have sort of an approved story, locally, that it's been vetted, and, encouraging you to work with, Cassie or others for the story you might want on a community profile. The story form that Jamie shared initially is helping to seed sort of the stories. And so I know Cassie and Sarah and team at National have continued to call for, newspaper stories, folks who have been on TV, community events where there might be, publicity and things. So if you've got something either emerging or something that has occurred, encouraging you to submit to let folks know that that has happened. And, that has a variety of pathways sort of at National with the stories. And again, Michelle being able to share some of the latest from the field when she's out speaking and talking with leadership. But also those stories will help populate the news and activity section. So those pieces don't necessarily have to be sort of longer, heavier blog or narratives. Maybe it's, 2 or 3 sentences that help support, pointing to a newspaper article or, a video the community has launched from work that they've done.
Great. Thanks, Stacy. That's helpful. We have another question just about to what degree this is, if all, kind of mobile friendly, both for viewing or even for folks that might want to be uploading the data from their mobile.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I would say the majority of the site is mobile friendly, so it should expand and contract sort of like what Stacy's showing us if you are on a smaller device. There will be a few items like the community assessment. The assessment should work fine. The maps and the map room, it's works, but it's much harder on a mobile device just because it's so small. So we always recommend that you use your desktop if you were going to use any of the map room or create new maps under that resources section. As for the metrics document or doing your quarterly report on a mobile device, that should work just fine. It's a mobile friendly form. So the text boxes and the text itself on the metrics page should expand and contract depending on your screen size. Other pieces, I think we're still likely in testing some of the journey pages and those types of things on mobile devices. But it is ultimately our goal to make sure that everything on the site is small screen friendly.
Okay. Very helpful. Thanks, Jamie. And again, I want to encourage folks, if you have questions or want to just name what you see that you like, that you see that is useful, feel free to offer that, or things that are maybe muddy for you or that you would like to see that are missing. And I want to highlight a question as you all are thinking about that Casey had posed earlier on that somebody may see in the chat, which is really about whether or not their particular youth coalition, if they wanted to kind of give it a better name that's more consistent with how they're kind of identifying themselves, what that could look like. And I think Sarah had some guidance on what that could look like. I just wonder, Jamie or Stacy, if you wanted to add anything to folks that might want to make changes to coalition name, or if Beth or Michelle had any guidance on that as well.
I'll zoom that out sort of one step further, and then perhaps we can sort of narrow back in. One of the things that with this being, a site that is evolving over the next couple of months as we work with, a handful of folks to do some user testing, and as we launch into the new year and do sort of the first round of reporting, we'll continue to learn a host of things together and be refining, titles and descriptions and language, etc. In addition to that, we, want to have the ability to continue to customize with you. And so for example, where the titles, these likely we can continue, again, to evolve and strengthen those, but those will be similar or need to be the same because this is a template across home site. Now, where we'll have the ability to do some customization, and in fact, after folks make their first submission in January, after folks sort of meet that milestone, as folks do, they'll be eligible to then work with Jamie, for example, on this area of leading indicators. Now, we've got a dozen or so sort of assets and social determinant of health indicators that are sort of eligible, if you will, to be a part of any community profile page. And so once folks sort of cross again that first milestone, then they can begin working with Jamie in this space, for example, to customize if they really, want to be working on more employment or more poverty, or want to have, race or maybe food, eligibility for free and reduced lunch. So there are, a dozen or so indicators that as an area that folks will be able to customize. So I don't know, that doesn't answer sort of the specific question, perhaps, so invite others to come back to that.
Yeah, and basically my answer was we can talk about it. We haven't, basically the way we named all of the communities was just by their community name. If there is a specific coalition name, we might be able to either nest it or have the actual community name be nested underneath the coalition name. It's just not something that we had discussed. Our first goal is just to get all the communities here and have some data available for them and open up their metrics form. And then, as Stacy mentioned, I think over time we can really look at more customization.
And I'll just add that I really want to acknowledge, and many of you have provided the feedback that you, especially when you have joined another coalition and we're trying to add to that with youth members or whatever, that there's names that are out there that exist for some of those coalitions that may not include, the words well-connected communities or whatever in that. So we'll just have to work with that. But as Jamie has said, well, start somewhere, and as we need to make adaptations and changes, we'll do the best we can with the structure and the frame that we have. I don't want to say that Jamie can change everything that we have, because I know that's not possible, and so do that. But we recognize we're very, very different. So, for example, Delaware has 3 counties. So putting up here these rankings of where you are, you're one of 3, and you're only competing with yourselves in Delaware. So that's not a particularly helpful thing in these communities compared to when you have 87 counties or 63 counties or whatever. So, but it'll be up there because that's just part of what the frame is. And how, and that is the reality of that situation. So there's some things I think we'll have to live with, and other parts that we can adjust. And we would always want to be in this project just be in communications with what your needs are and understanding what they are, and then doing what we can within the frame to do that. Mm-hmm. And it is particularly challenging because we've let you all define communities, so it's not all by county. We know that some of you are working in a subset of a city or a portion of so it's really not even all counties. So while and we haven't listed all of them as counties, you'll see that in cases. So.
Yep. Thanks, Michelle. And it sounds like, Jamie, you're offering up there. We can have a little more time to consider it, but there probably is a nuance or maybe a couple of options around nesting that, so that we're honoring kind of the unique identities folks have while kind of keeping a common structure and framework.
Yes, definitely. So before we get any farther, Stacy and Monty, do we want to show really quickly the quarterly reporting schedule? I know it's right at the top of the hour. I want to make sure we don't lose people, and that's kind of our last important piece to show.
Yep, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yep. Stacy, can you stop sharing your screen for one moment?
I'd be happy to. Thank you.
All right, let me see here.
And as Jamie's pulling that up, just starting to verbalize for you, we again sort of are going to be working on a quarterly basis. And so the first sort of full report that you all will do in the system will reflect fourth quarter of 2018. So that quarter running pretty traditionally, right, from October to December. And when the website launches in full on January the 7th, then the reporting for this first time out will be open from the 7th to the 31st, so that you'll have a little extra time, again, to be training folks or a little trial and error. We'll, again, be learning from you at that time what works. There'll be places where you, when you do that first set of entry and ongoing, really, where you'll be able to write in support ticket questions, if you will, or reach out through an email to be able to get some feedback. And then once all reports are submitted, again, the beauty of it being electronic, right, is that immediately on February the 1st, then all things can be updated live. So to your community profile pages as well as to the national page. And from that point, you'll be able to, again, extract your data, be able to, pull off any of the visuals that you may be needing for your local conversations. And, Michelle, Beth, and Rebecca and others will have what they need then to carry that next conversation over with Monica. And you can see from the schedule that, of course, it follows a pretty similar pattern, although sort of after the first time, we will be on sort of a 2-week, I know that you all are collecting a good bit of this data already. You all are very skilled for tracking, numbers and other things as a matter of the work that you do on an everyday basis, and just sort of adding a few systems, hopefully, to help feed into what's being collected here and what you can pull back from it. A couple of other things just in the way of support, and so want to be able, again, with our last couple of minutes, invite sort of Allie's voice in as well. As we mentioned, Jamie and I will be working on a series of FAQs and a little bit of a how-to sheet to support the work in January. Once the website launches in full and sort of everything is in its place, Jamie will do some more discrete support videos so that, if somebody's looking at a particular, section or piece, that they'll be able to pull up more of a 2 to 3 minute video to get support around that shortly after the first of the year. But also in the short term, as you all are thinking about how you collect the data, maybe there's some things that you aren't capturing, but want to talk through how to set up this process with your coalition. Allie has some office hours coming up. And so, Allie, might we invite you to share a little bit about that and how folks can sign up if they're interested in talking about the reporting and or sort of any other topic for the fourth quarter?
Sure, absolutely, Stacy. And I'll go ahead and I'll use the chat box. I've held a couple of blocks on my time on my calendar next week on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, and would be happy to connect and walk through this in more detail. Either if you're like me and you walk away and you're like, that was the question I should have asked, or if you have colleagues who you think who would benefit from a walkthrough as well, happy to do either one. And as Stacy mentioned, also just think through some of the key questions and explore those more deeply if that would be useful. You can schedule those with me, probably thinking about half-hour blocks. Just reach out to me via email and we'll get that scheduled and set up. I'm just happy to support and continue this journey with everyone.
Thanks, Allie.
Yep, appreciate that, Allie. And Jamie, thanks for making sure we squeeze this in, as we might start to have some folks peel off. And our team is kind of committed to staying on as long as you all need, but wanted to make sure that was in there. And again, assuming if there are any questions or concerns about what was just kind of laid out by Jamie and Allie in terms of the reporting and kind of the schedule, this would be a good time to ask that or to get some clarification.
That's great. And Monty, I'm recognizing that I believe maybe it's Virginia, and not 100% sure, had asked about how the map is created, and knowing we're not focused on that in this section, but Jamie, wondering if you might show just the quick pathway and sort of the starter there, just to invite the exploration. And we've got you on mute still. It looks like you're working on it.
I know. I'm like, what should I do first? Sure. So are we talking about the map on the community dashboard? Is that what you're referring to, you think?
I'm not sure. So we can invite for clarification. And I think that you or I may have mentioned the ability to sort of, do the map, and that the mapping may not be as friendly on the mobile. And so it seemed like that might have been when the question came in, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. Well, just as a quick refresher, a quick reminder, there is the map here on each community homepage. So you can see this partner map, and it can be updated in this Update Community tab. So when you click in the Update Community tab, there's this link here for partners, and you're able to type in the organization name, address, and website if you have that. You can delete those or add more as time goes on. So that's for that. For the actual map room itself, we have done some previous webinars on the map room, so I'm happy to send some links to those webinars that we've done in the past. But here we just have our CARES database worth of data. So we have about 20,000 layers available here. You can type in any keyword, so things like poverty, tobacco, obesity, smoking, whatever it may be that you're interested in your community. Click search. You can see here all of the map layers then populate. You can choose any of these layers to add to the map here. So very quickly you can see I have a national map of poverty, and I could potentially zoom into any area. So now I'm on the spot. I'm just going to go to Lincoln, Nebraska. Promise I'm not from Nebraska. I just got Nebraska on the mind here. And we can see what poverty looks like, for example, at a county level or at a tract level, and get some more information. The training on this map room, we can spend a lot of time on it. So if you do have questions about how to use this, there is a version of this map room currently on the live site, so you're welcome to play around there. But otherwise, I'm happy to work with folks one-on-one or schedule another webinar just around the map room itself in the future.
Yep.
Thanks, Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think just to double click on Jamie's point, it's an extraordinary resource. And so it's probably worth those of you who want to be using the mapping for some of your decision support and for communication, it's worth kind of a deeper dive. And Jamie, I suspect you and team will be willing to do that in the future. Let's see here, making sure that all of the questions are getting answered. Shay reminds us, as you can see, that the website's going to be it's just a development. It'll go live in January. And want to honor folks' time. Beth, I think, had to take off. If there's Michelle or others that have any things that we've missed, or Shay or Joanne, this would be a good opportunity if you think that we've missed anything in our kind of what we're sharing so far.
Yeah, I'd like to add something, Monty, please. This is Joanne. Just wanted to tell everyone that we're continuing to add online modules for the Master Health Volunteer training or curriculum on the website that you can add now, that you can access now. So we actually got 4 more modules completed yesterday, and as soon as Jamie has a chance to upload them, we'll be grateful. So you can, excuse me, watch our progress there.
Great. That's exciting, Joanne. I know there's a lot of folks who are anxious to kind of jump into that. So it'd be great to see it as we go on.
And the stories that you've submitted into Shay, and we've had it in the newsletter and so forth, and that you did in the communications request that we have for this fall, were immensely helpful. I've had some follow-up conversations with some individuals, but for example, I was able to take those stories and share them at APLU when we had a session where we were able to focus on what we're doing in well-connected communities. And as you know, what speaks to people is stories, the real human interest stories. So I really appreciate that section in the dashboard. And while it'll take a little bit of narrative work to do that writing, it is the stories that really really help us communicate that. I'm going to Robert Wood Johnson tomorrow, and for strategic communications training, multiple training they put us through, and one of the things they've really been focused on is telling our stories. So thank you for the work that you're doing around telling your stories, and I just want to reiterate to you that they are being used. It's not just a place where we're putting those, but being able to tell the human side. One person had written in one of their stories that something about the youth would not have would have probably followed his brother's footsteps and gone down the road of addiction if he hadn't been involved in the coalition work. I mean, that one sentence is priceless in telling the story about what we're doing. So I just wanted to, I know you see it there, and you've done great work with this, and I just wanted to reiterate how valuable that is, even when people come to the website to hear those stories. That's where they can relate to.
Yep. Great reminder, Michelle. So again, as this kind of pioneering group is on the front end of kind of setting some norms as more communities join in Wave 2, if you're on the fence around whether you should submit a story or not, or an idea, err on the side of going for it would be really helpful as a leadership behavior as we're kind of growing this learning network and inspiring others to kind of take action. Sometimes we tend to hold these to ourselves out of either humility or because there's other things going on. Just curious, those of you who are still, I see a number in the video, maybe a thumbs up if this is, you feel like we're heading in the right direction with the site and the metrics, or, kind of feeling good about this, or if there's anybody who honestly is feeling like, hey, this is not going the right direction. Thumbs up. Are we moving in the right direction, folks? Some of you? I see some nods.
And we're getting some yeses and
yeah,
helpful in the chat box as well. That's awesome.
Wonderful. Yeah. And as again acknowledged earlier on, a lot of you have been not only patient, but really had some valuable input and insight that's kind of gotten us to this point. So before we close, any other kind of final reflections or thoughts?
I'd say I might do one more sort of asset for sort of forward thinking, as once we get into first quarter of next year is coming out of the harvest. There were a number of folks who would like to be able to have conversation and follow up with folks they met and were talking and learning with. And Jamie and her team have the ability to bake in a forum or sort of a chat space for the community teams. We often hate to sort of do that out of the gate because sometimes they can lie a little dormant, but that functionality is there, and we want to continue to talk with you about how to make the most of that if that's something that you're interested in going into the future. So just something to be thinking about as we grow together.
Yep. Thank you.
Well, everyone, it's 2:17, so we're a few minutes over our webinar time. So I wanted to let everyone know that if they have additional questions, feel free to reach out to one of us. And we thank you for your time joining us for this webinar today. And we definitely look forward to seeing the final product from Jamie as we continue to add to the website. So thanks, everyone.